Welcome to the Healed Podcast. I'm Robin Denton, your host. I am a faith-based certified health coach whose vision is to bring hope to people who are suffering from chronic illnesses. On this podcast, I will share with you what healthcare solutions are working and how you can find them. I will give you tips to help you get started on your own wellness journey, and I will share stories of people who were suffering, just like you might be, who have found complete healing. Here on the Healed Podcast, we believe that God is the one true healer and that the body, when given the right circumstances, can heal itself. All right, let's get into it. Hi there, I am Robin Denton with the Healed Podcast, and I'm here with Jeannie Daniels this morning. And Jeannie is a nurse here, a registered nurse here in Morristown, Tennessee. So, Jeannie, do you care to tell me a little bit about yourself this morning?
Yes. So I am a wife and mother of three. That's been my biggest blessing in my life. And I actually have two bonus daughters, one who is not officially yet, but we call her our daughter anyways. So I've got one son married, another one to be get married soon. I have been passionate about nursing since I was about 4 years old, when I always told my parents that's what I was going to do. And I just love helping people in any way I can. But through nursing has been that for the last 26 years. But things started shifting probably more like 15 years ago. One is being that I realized that I wasn't really feeling like I was helping people get better. When I worked in the hospital, when I worked in a doctor's office, people just getting worse. The more medications they were on, the more symptoms they had, the more side effects they had, the more health issues they had. And then I started having some of my own health issues with digestion and also with hormones, and was not getting answers at the doctor's office. And it was always about treating the symptom and not really getting to the root of what was really going on. So when I started doing my own research and asking friends and having people who had benefits from different natural supplements and even essential oils, at first I was a little leery about it because it sounded crazy that an essential oil or some herb would help me. But I did find healing. I did find improvement in my issues and got more to the root of the issue and be able to then share what I had been learning with other people as well.
So you've kind of moved from traditional nursing into health coaching. Is that correct? And you guys are just starting a new adventure. Tell me about this.
Yes, we're so excited. So I've done some health coaching while I was still working as a traditional nurse with diabetics and doing some things with that. And what I realized I really wanted to do was empower people to make healthy choices for themselves, to be informed, to know what their options were and how they could make those choices, whether it was with their lifestyle, their diet, their stress level, what foods they're bringing into their home, what activities they were doing, what kind of chemicals they're being exposed to in their homes. And so that led me to doing health coaching. I got a health coaching certificate in May of 2021 through Jordan Rubin. He's written the book, The Maker's Diet, and he had written a health coaching program that I did. And it kind of moved me in more into that holistic side of health care, if you want to call it that, instead of sick care. That the idea is that we're not just a physical body, also that we have mental health and our spiritual health, and it all ties in together. And a lot of his book goes back to how did God create our bodies? Our bodies were created to heal, and he put things here on this earth that was supposed to help us. So that happened. And then since then, we have kind of joined together. There's several different practitioners that have different gifts and abilities, and we are opening it's going to be called Mind and Body Co-op, And the idea is that we're just coming together to help our community share our services that we can and help each other while we're helping other people. So we are fixing our office. We will be in that location come November, and we're very excited about that.
Yes. And that is, I mean, the office is just beautiful, and what these ladies
Mhm.
is amazing. So I'm really excited about the launch of your new office. So okay, let's kind of get started here. We're gonna
Mhm.
be talking about hormones and menopause today with Jeannie. And so one thing that I love, Jeannie, is that you bring in the perspective of our country, like our
Mhm.
country versus other countries. So, one of the questions
Mhm.
that I want to start with is why women in the United States struggle so much with hormones and menopause. Are women in other countries not struggling as much as we are during this time? What's the difference?
Yeah. So when I started noticing the changes in my life that I knew, oh, something's changing here, I started doing my research and realized that a lot of the Eastern cultures in countries like Japan, they don't even have a word for menopause. And I was like, what do you mean they don't have a word for menopause? Every woman and that I know is talking about menopause, especially in my age group. And what I really realized is that they do not have all the issues that we do. They call it the second spring because it's just a new season of life, and it's not something that people dread or talk about hot flashes and all the things that can come along with menopause. So when I started looking at that, I thought, well, what's the difference? Why? I mean, we have female bodies and we have these transitions. So why aren't they experiencing that? And what it really came down to for me when I was researching that is that a lot of it is lifestyle, stress, and I can talk a lot about that because it's such a key component to how our body responds in menopause. I don't think a lot of people realize that even though your ovaries during your fertile years have an important role in producing estrogen, that as you get into menopause, we're like, okay, our ovaries don't need to do that anymore. They don't need to produce as much hormones because we're not needing to be fertile. And so our adrenals are supposed to take over and give us a little bit of estrogen that we need to support those things so that we don't have all those menopause symptoms. And what happens is that our lifestyle has contributed to that. We have so much stress, and a lot of times we're living in that chronic stress cycle. And so our body can, or our adrenals can focus on making cortisol for our stress response, or it can be balanced and have times where it can build estrogen so that we have that estrogen production. And so what I've seen even a lot with my clients that I've worked with, that a lot of them have adrenal insufficiency or adrenal, you can even get to the point where it's fatigue. There's controversy on that, whether doctors actually like the adrenal fatigue. But to say all that is that we're not making that little bit of estrogen typically that we need to, because we're in stress. The other thing that our lifestyle here in the US is we have a lot of toxins as far as chemical exposure that are outlawed in other countries, and that affects our estrogen. For one, it can affect our estrogen and progesterone because of the fake estrogen and how our body responds. And there's a whole cascade of that that we're exposed to. The other thing is community. And I think there are at times where probably as a culture we're better at it or in certain parts of the country. But when you look at community in areas or other countries, they don't spend as much time always working. They're spending more time with family and doing things with lower stress levels and that kind of thing. And that's another key component to having a balanced hormones, is making sure that our master hormone, which is our oxytocin, is in charge in a high, versus having cortisol always driving our body, or basically um, just keeping our bodies in control with cortisol versus having oxytocin. And oxytocin is the one that gives us that calming effect and that happy, just relaxed kind of state. That's one of the reasons why I picked the verse for my health coaching, Proverbs 17:22, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. Because it's so important that we are supporting our bodies in a healthy way so that we can have joy, that we can make sure that we are not in a place of feeling stress and sickness and depressed and anxiety and all those things. So that is part of it. Yeah.
That makes so much sense. And I've never heard it put that way, but I mean, as I'm listening to you, thinking about just my life and the amount of time I spend working, and I mean, you're suggesting things like less stress, more community. I'm like, this sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Sounds like things that sounds like things I need in my life. So I love it. Did you have something else to say about how the US is different?
I get the one other main thing in that is when I talk about what are your options, other than lifestyle things, is also herbal things. And, we know that the Chinese, for example, and even Japanese and other cultures, they use a lot of herbal things to support their bodies, and how herbs kind of, because they were created by God and our bodies are created by God, they work in harmony, where things that are synthetic or made in a lab could help some of the issues, but they usually cause other issues or side effects in the meantime. And of course, you have to have a balance in it. You can't just go out there and be like, oh, I'm just going to, take a whole bunch of something. You need to find what your body needs and support it. And so your body gets back to that homeostasis or that balance that God intended it to have during whatever season of life you're in or whatever your body is needing to support itself. So that was the other thing.
Okay. So all good things. And we're going to dive into those a little bit deeper in our conversation. So first of all, what's the best way? I hear a lot of different talk about how to check your hormones. It seems like, when I go to the doctor, they do blood work. And then, but I've also heard that there is, I guess, a urine test, a saliva test. So can you speak to that a little bit about which way you think is the best way to check our hormones?
Right. So yeah, the saliva test, or I'm sorry, the serum test, the blood work, it does give you a piece of information that can be helpful. So it's not to say that it's not always helpful, but I even experienced this for myself for years back in my 20s when I was having problems during my fertile years. The doctor kept checking my hormones just with my blood work and kept saying everything's fine. And I knew I wasn't fine. I knew that something was wrong. And eventually I finally did get somebody to listen to me, and they realized that I was estrogen dominant. My progesterone was low. But when I started studying, especially for my health coaching, I realized that the blood serum levels only gives you a spot, a moment in time of what your blood is or what your hormones are in your blood. And that only tells you that moment, and it only tells you what your hormones are doing as far as in your blood. It doesn't tell how much is actually getting into your cells to be using. So your body's full of different types of receptors. You have hormone receptors. If there's things blocking those hormones because of toxins or fake estrogens, those receptors, then they're not getting in there and actually being able to use them. So your blood work actually could come back and say everything's normal or within normal range, but it's not telling you the whole picture. So we do have two other things that we use in our practice. I have hormone saliva kits that you can take home and do yourself, and then we send it in the lab and get those results. And then we have the Dutch urine. The Dutch urine is more extensive. It gets into not just what your body is using hormone-wise, but it also tells us the metabolites of how those hormones are being broken down And even the fact that a lot of people don't realize that they have 3 different types of estrogen and different types of estrogen for different seasons of life. And that what's important is to make sure that they are in balance for what your body needs. And so that is helpful with that. And it gives us a lot of information. What I have found, because there's more cost involved with the Dutch urine, and it is beneficial for some people, especially if they've already had other testing and they've already tried other things, then sometimes we can dig a little deeper with that and get some answers that way. But what I have found to be very beneficial, at least for a starting point, is to do the saliva test. It's a little more cost effective. It gives us enough information about your estrogen, progesterone, the estrogen progesterone ratio, your cortisols, and how that can help us build a plan for you in that moment of time of where your body is. Where is it needing support? Does it need some estrogen support? Does it need progesterone support? It also checks your testosterone level. Or is it your adrenals are just stressed out too much, and we need to start there and getting that cortisol level in balance so that your other functions of your adrenals can happen as well.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
just sitting here learning all kinds of things. I'm like, 3 types of estrogen. There's, different. I did not realize that my blood work is just giving
Mhm.
that a snapshot. So good information.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's start hitting some of these hot topics. So,
Okay.
so I started noticing probably when I was around 40, I would wake up in the middle of the night. I would hop online, not a good thing to do. And all my friends were on there at 3:30 in the morning. We're all
Yeah.
waking up at 3:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And so, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I
Sure.
know that was probably the first thing that I started noticing
Yeah.
as I got older.
Yeah. It's really not actually a very simple answer because it can be a little different for each person or what's happening. There is a role that estrogen plays, but my main focus in that, and I'll explain that, is the liver, because your liver has a big job. And I mean, it's not just your recycling plant, but it also has parts with detoxification and cortisol metabolism, estrogen metabolism. So if your liver's struggling, we all have a 24-hour circadian rhythm. Typically, your liver is going to try to detox between the 2 to 5 different, depending on the person. But if it's struggling, if the liver can't do its detoxification during the night, it will wake you up because it's a little alarm system.
Well,
And
I
it,
think I think my liver and all my friends' livers all woke up at 3:30.
and it is funny how that happens. That I experienced it for myself. Like I went years like every night, like, what is my problem? I was blaming it on the dog. I was blaming it on the train going by in the middle of the night, and some of those things might contribute. But it was like if I woke up, I couldn't go back to sleep. And there was definitely some issues with that. So as I learned to support my liver with doing things like castor oil liver packs, detoxifying my liver with making sure what I was eating, doing some herbal support, doing things like milk thistle, um, that started going away. And the other part of that was also, I think there's a lot of information out there about intermittent fasting, and I am not against intermittent fasting. I think it has a lot of benefit, but as women in perimenopause and as closer as you get to menopause, or maybe you're already there, our bodies need support with our diet and our food so much differently than we did in our younger years. And another issue that people are finding is that the reason they wake up in the middle of the night is because their blood sugar is dropping. When your blood sugar drops, it's a stress response and your cortisol bumps up. And what does your cortisol do? Cortisol is supposed to give you that energy to like go run or fight, run away from a bear, or, the fight or flight kind of thing. And so if your blood sugar is dropping, your cortisol is bumping up, that could be causing you to be waking up too. So I've also implemented, not every night, but most nights, just a little protein snack with a little bit of carbs before bed. My thing to go to is a prune with a piece of cheese. It might sound weird, but or not a prune, a date. And it keeps enough of the blood sugar going during the night so that I'm not having that cortisol response. So it could be one or the other. It could be both, and it could be a combination of things, but there are definitely things that you can do to support that so that you're not awake at 3:30 in the morning.
Yes, because that makes for a long day the next day.
It does. It does.
And that really makes sense to me because our livers just get overloaded with emotions, with all the chemicals that are in everything that has to be processed, and medications, and so many things. Our livers are under a lot of stress. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about hot flashes. The most fun part of menopause in the United States is hot flash. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I think when you stated the question is it possible to go through menopause without hot flashes?
Yeah.
And the simple answer is yes. Now, most women experience it to a certain degree. Some people, they have hot flashes for a little while and then they never have it again. Other people, it's years. A lot of that has to do with your estrogen levels. And as we have a change in estrogen, as we drop out of those fertile years into perimenopause, again, our adrenals should be supporting. There are other tissues in our body that also make a little bit of estrogen. If for some reason that's not happening, and that drastic change in estrogen, that is one of the main reasons that we have hot flashes. I accidentally found out by taking another supplement that I was taking to try to help me sleep, that had some melatonin in it, that when I took that supplement, I didn't have hot flashes. And then when I didn't take that supplement, I had hot flashes. And so when I did the research, I found out that it was the mushrooms that were in there that were helping me not have hot flashes. And so there's a lot of medicinal mushrooms out there, like the shiitake and the turkey tail and there's several, but those are two in there. So that's one of the things that I help women get on their plan, is figure out how they want to add mushrooms to their supplement range or supplement daily protocols or whatever. One way I do it is through mushroom coffee. And I also take a probiotic that has mushrooms in it as well. And we can get into that as well too, about lifestyle, but supporting our gut is really important. And so that's another way to do it. There's other ways to support your estrogen levels. I have at times, I don't have to take this now, but it's a natural estrogen that comes from rhubarb root. And it can give us an extra little bit of support while we're supporting those other functions in our body, like our stress levels and our adrenals and our gut. There might be a season where you need an extra support of estrogen. I'm not a big push that you have to be on all these supplements the rest of your life, but there might be a transition time while you're doing those changes to support your body naturally, to give a little bit of better boost to that. The nice thing about that is these, again, are plant-based, so they don't have the side effects that something synthetic could cause, and it doesn't have the risk factors as well.
I definitely need to check out your mushroom coffee.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to put that on my list.
I have found a couple different brands, but my favorite one, I'll just tell you, is from Paleo Valley. You order it online and it has 8 different mushrooms in it. And my husband, who is a coffee fanatic, I like coffee, but I don't drink it all the time. But now that I drink the mushroom coffee, but he actually occasionally says, oh, it's tolerable. It's not the same, but it has a little more, to me, a little more nutty flavor. So it's nothing that tastes bad. And it also is very supportive for your body. It's actually supportive for your gut and your brain too. So you're getting a lot of benefits with doing mushroom coffee.
That helps with hot flashes.
Yes.
Give me some.
You can do that. You can do that.
Give me some. Okay. Yeah. So this sounds drastic. but
Yeah.
um, but I'm not kidding. I've heard this. I've
Hmm.
been advised to do this and been like, no way. Um, I've had people say to me, well, you don't have to suffer through menopause. You should
Hmm.
just go ahead and get a hysterectomy. You're not
Hmm.
going to have children anymore.
Hmm. Yep.
So why not just get it all taken out?
Yes. We could talk about this for a long time. One is, you know, and I take this from other people that say it as well too, but like the problem is not you were born with too many ovaries or uteruses. Like that is not the root cause of your problems in menopause. So even taking that out, actually, like people who have had to have surgery for one reason or another and had a hysterectomy for whatever medical reason, they are being medically induced into menopause. And goodness, that's a hard change because you go from having the natural hormone supports that your ovaries do, to, especially if they had both ovaries removed, to nothing, and all of a sudden your body's in crisis. I mean, I remember a lady when I was a teenager, one of my mom's friends had a hysterectomy, and she went months. I remember her trying to come back to church and like being so emotionally, physically weak, like laying in the church pew. And I was like, what is going on? So not to say that everybody has that experience when they've had a hysterectomy, but it's a serious thing. Like you would have, I would have to take a lot into consideration before I went to that extreme. And then you're talking about not just the hormonal changes, you're also talking about the physical changes. Your bladder is there, and you can have bladder that has, that drops because all those ligaments and the parts are not there to hold it up anymore. Um, Even if you've had a hysterectomy and for whatever reason in the past, you still need to support those pathways. You still need to support what your uterus and your ovaries or whatever you had taken out, because your body still has the pathways there of hey, in the physical part of it, the structural part of it. So there's definitely um, a lot to consider before going to that extreme to do
Well,
that.
and then I feel like you set yourself up for things like scar tissue
Mm-hmm.
and things that can just cause more problems. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought up the point about the bladder
Mm-hmm.
dropping being an issue that can happen,
Yeah.
because we don't want that.
No, no.
No.
No, and it, and like to say, there's reasons why people have, and again, my job is never to tell somebody what they should do
Mhm.
for themselves. My job is to give them everything that I possibly can give them information so they can make an informed decision. And then it's really between them and God. And I know their doctors, recommendation can be there as well, but they have a lot they need to consider before making a decision like that about their health.
Mhm.
Um,
I love that because honestly, that's been some advice given to me, and
mhm.
I don't really have that many issues.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think people see that as an option just to have
Mhm.
a hysterectomy, you
Yeah.
know, just eh, without necessarily having major problems. I know
Right.
sometimes there can be serious problems, and that's a necessary thing, but
Right.
I
Right.
feel like surgery always needs to be
Yeah.
a very
Pretty,
last
yeah.
resort.
Pretty much with
Um,
any health condition, avoid surgery
anything.
if you can.
Yes,
So,
God gave you all the parts because you need all the parts.
yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, some of my hormone issues in my 20s, I have found out now that it's because I don't have a gallbladder. I had my gallbladder removed in my early 20s. By my late 20s, I was infertile, is what they were telling me, and
Wow.
no reason for it. I think there was several things that played into it, but definitely not having a gallbladder because of how it helps synthesize cholesterol, which cholesterol is your building block for hormones. So
And it supports the liver,
yes, yeah,
all kinds
and
of things.
digestion, and digestion's
Yeah, all
important
kinds of
about
things. Very
estrogen.
important. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about, before we wrap it up, let's talk about supplements and
Hmm.
some of your like favorite ways or best ways that you found to support hormones.
Yeah. So
Mushroom
lifestyle
popping.
is it. Yeah. We've already talked about stress, and definitely that is stress and emotions is where I have actually found to be the most important starting point. And one of those things is our spiritual state, because God made us to have relationship. And if any relationship in our life is off, if there's stress there because of broken relationships, but most importantly, God made us to be spiritual beings, and that we are supposed to have our spiritual life in order with what God designed. And the number one thing is He wants to have a relationship with us, and that came through our relationship with Jesus, and how we can have that peace that no matter what happens to us physically, that we know where we stand for eternity. And so that is where my heart is. That's part of who I am. And so I'm not shy about that. I've built it into my coaching program. People don't have to believe the same way I do. I'm still willing to help them, but I'm going to be honest with them. That is a big component of where they need to be looking first to be able to have healing, spiritually, emotionally, and then physically. So those things kind of sometimes are all at the same time, but sometimes we just need a starting point. So that's part of it. Then we add into lifestyle things. We talked about, toxins and how that can help hurt us. But then how can we help our bodies and give it? Most illness starts either with too much of something or not enough of something. So if we can give our bodies the tools it needs to be able to function and heal, like our diet, one of the big things that we'll get into when I do my health coaching is, okay, let's focus on macros. You need plenty of protein, you need good fats, you need good carbs, and you need to avoid some things like seed oils, a lot of sugar, a lot of processed foods. So keeping it simple, making baby steps in that direction, but knowing too that our bodies are not the same they were when we were in our 20s and 30s and 40s. There's a transition that has happened, and it's okay if our body doesn't look the same as it did when we were younger, but we also want to make sure there's a balance in that too. And so one big thing I have found is that protein is key, because protein builds muscle. As we age, we start to lose muscle mass. That affects also our estrogen. It also adds to a lot of different problems. More muscle mass, more better metabolism, less fat. And so all those things play into it together. And that people are surprised when I tell them that as women, we should have at minimum 100 grams of protein a day. Depending on your body mass, it could go up or down a little bit, but most of us are not even coming close to that. And then fats have gotten a bad rep over the years. I think in the holistic world, or a lot of people are awakening to the fact that not every fat's the same. There are some fats you should avoid, but things like olive oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee, tallow, those are all good fats. Coconut oil that feed our bodies the things that it needs. It helps support our brain. It helps support our hormone production. It has a whole list of things that we need. Even in our younger years, if we don't have the right amount of fat in our body, we can't even be fertile. So for some people, that's the reason that they have issues of infertility. And then some of the supplements that I like, when we think about our female hormones, we have our main two is estrogen, progesterone. In our perimenopause, early time, a lot of times our symptoms are because we have a drop in progesterone. Progesterone is the key hormone for fertility, so we're not needing that as much. But as that drops off, sometimes it's because our estrogen's too high in those early years, or even in our fertile years. And so estrogen, progesterone are like the stepsisters. If one is low, the other's high. And so we want to find that happy balance between the two of them. So I have found that wild yam is a very good option for people who have low progesterone or having symptoms of low progesterone. There's different ways to do it. There are supplements out there. My favorite way is topically, because progesterone doesn't do well through the gut. It doesn't metabolize as well. And so if you put it in as a cream or I've used the Young Living blend, Progestins Plus at times. There's also some other supplements that I get through Full Script that have the wild yam in it. So that's one of them that I have found that has been very helpful for that. And then things like the Estravera. There's also one that's called the Women's Hormone Support, and it has things, some of those mushrooms in it again, and then some fermented chaste tree. That's another one that can support that. And then also going back to supporting the gut, because a lot of us don't have healthy guts. If we don't have healthy guts, there's going to be other problems, in hormones included. The Hippocrates said back in AD, whatever it was, 40, that all disease starts in the gut, and there's a lot of truth to that. And so supporting our gut with good probiotics, and there's one specifically for women too that can help with that. And then also the mushrooms, which whether they're in a probiotic or your coffee or however you choose to get those, it can be a good benefit there.
Well, Jeannie, I appreciate you talking with us today. Such great information. But I want to just a couple of things before we go. One, how can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So right now I've been kind of in transition until I get into my office space. I do offer telehealth visits as well. And I'm actually doing home visits, and I'll continue to do those two things as well for people locally, or if you're out of town, I've also had people do telehealth, and I can also mail kits to you and email things to you. So I have Facebook and Instagram that both have options. I have a Jeannie's Journey page on Facebook. Early Nurse JKD is on my Instagram. And I also have my email, which is Jeannie's Wellness Journey at gmail.com. And then from there, I will be building also a website once we get everything settled with our new place and all that information. So I will have office hours starting November. And so I'm excited about that as well.
Well, and I will put links to those to how to get in touch with you. Your email and Facebook and Instagram and all those things will be in the show notes from the podcast. So last thing, what would you say to somebody who's struggling with their hormones? What if you could say one thing to them? Give one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I think, just as I needed hope when I was in my 20s, being told that I was infertile and that I had, if I ever wanted more kids, that I would need to take fertility drugs, that there's hope, that God created our bodies to heal, to be in balance. And so it's number one thing, just take a deep breath and do some deep breathing, because the more you stress about it, the worse it's going to be. And find a person who is willing to come and walk along with you with that concern, that can give you information that can be helpful, whether that's me or somebody else that is helping people find natural solutions to those issues.
Yeah,
and
there
getting to the
are
root
answers.
cause.
There are
Mhm.
answers out there. So,
Yeah.
so don't lose hope. I love
Yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, thank you for being here with us today. And
Thank you for doing
you
this.
guys get out there and contact Jeannie if you're having, hormone issues of any kind.
Mhm.
She is so knowledgeable, as you can tell from this interview, and she is such a a voice of calm reason. And so that's one thing I love about you, Jeannie. So, okay. Thank you, friends, for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Robin.
Friends, thank you so much for listening to the podcast this week. I'm so honored to be able to speak truth into your life. I hope our time together was a blessing to you. If it was, let me know by subscribing to the show so you don't miss an episode. If there was something that really resonated with you, please share that with me by leaving me a comment or sending me a direct message. I love to hear your God stories. Be sure to hop on over to the show notes to get your free download, 7 Qualities to Look For in a Doctor. While you are there, I would love to connect with you on social media. And if you would like to leave me a review, that would help me move towards my goal of sharing natural health solutions with more people. Until next week, stay healthy.